Hi, this is Sally Book Club, bringing you the best books from around the world every day. Today I'm introducing a book called Emile. The author, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, was a renowned 18th century French Enlightenment philosopher. Napoleon once said of Rousseau, "Without Rousseau, there would have been no French Revolution." The French Revolution's ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity became foundational values for modern societies. Rousseau's works like Discourse on Inequality and The Social Contract profoundly influenced political philosophy and the French Revolution. Emile stands as Rousseau's groundbreaking work on education. Here's an interesting story. German philosopher Kant was known for his rigid punctuality. Locals used his daily walks as a clock. He only missed two walks in his life. Once was when the French Revolution began, the other when he got absorbed in reading. That book was Emile, the very one we're discussing today. Emile's core concept is Rousseau's naturalistic education philosophy. This approach emphasizes understanding and nurturing children's natural development. Though written before nuclear threats and pollution, Rousseau already warned about civilization's corrupting influence. She believed urban society could erode human virtue. The glittering temptations of Paris and London were moral traps. Only through natural education could children resist corruption and become truly free, virtuous individuals. To illustrate his ideas, Rousseau created Emile, a fictional orphan boy. Through natural education, Emile grows from infant to free-thinking citizen, guided by his innate nature. Emile became Rousseau's intellectual child so much that he called him my son. The book caused immediate sensation across Europe. Its radical ideas led to banning by courts and Rousseau's exile. Yet, ironically, French royalty supposedly had King Louis XVI learn crafts as Rousseau advocated. So Louis XVI became famously known as the locksmith king, mastering lockmaking. He even redesigned France's guillotine, finding the original design inefficient. Ironically, he himself was executed by the guillotine during the Revolution. Rereading Emile today, we still find Rousseau's educational philosophy profoundly insightful. Like when we struggle between nurturing childhood happiness and academic competitiveness, or when torn between poetic ideals and harsh realities. Rousseau would say, much suffering arises from the imbalance between desires and capabilities. Doesn't this make us rethink our approach? The Chinese edition of Emile spans 600,000 words across 800 plus pages. I'll distill its essence through two audio episodes. In part one, we'll explore Rousseau's naturalistic educational philosophy, including its application through developmental stages and nurturing children's innate nature. In part two, we'll discuss cultivating true citizenship and social maturity. As the Chinese saying goes, understanding worldly affairs is knowledge. Social wisdom is literature. Rousseau certainly didn't want Emile becoming a jaded opportunist. So what education prepares one for life's storms? As people say, knowing theories doesn't guarantee a good life. Rousseau's philosophy offers both fundamental truths and practical educational guidance. Let's begin our exploration of Emile Part 1. First, what exactly is Rousseau's naturalistic education? At its core, education should follow and develop humanity's natural essence, hence naturalism. The crucial question, what defines human nature? Rousseau believed human nature has two aspects. First, humans naturally seek pleasure and avoid pain, preferring comfort, happiness, and fulfillment. Second aspect, Rousseau believed humans inherently possess moral conscience, naturally drawn to good and repelled by evil. But before developing rationality, children can't distinguish if their actions are good or evil. Some children deliberately break things or kill small birds. Adults might say a 3-year-old reveals the adult, predicting the child's doomed future. But Rousseau argued children at this stage lack moral discernment. We must help develop their reasoning to distinguish right from wrong. Critical thinking skills must be nurtured so they understand proper conduct and decision-making. Thus, education should utilize children's pleasure and pain responses and conscience. while developing rational capacities at appropriate stages. First principle: education must begin with sensory experience. Rousseau believed the most meaningful lives belong not to the longest lived, but to those who feel life most deeply. Therefore, children should experience both joy and pain. Opposing the honey jar overprotection approach, rich sensory experiences, including controlled exposure to hardship, build resilience for life's challenges. Some modern parents obsess over prenatal literacy training. Rousseau vehemently opposed such practices. His second method emphasizes object based learning through direct interaction. He advocated delayed literacy training, warning against abstract concepts dulling sensory perception. Better to experience a beautiful sunrise than merely write the word beauty. Concrete experiences form accurate concepts and sound judgment. We can safely assume Rousseau would oppose rote memorization of incomprehensible classical texts. This outlines Rousseau's naturalistic education framework, who believed education must follow natural developmental laws to cultivate truly free and fulfilled individuals. Methodologically, children need diverse experiences, including hardship, to enrich their human development. On the flip side, children should engage directly with physical objects through hands-on learning. How should this principle adapt to children's natural development across different growth stages? Let's examine infancy, 0 to 2 years. Education considerations first. We'll focus on two key principles. First principle: parents must avoid overprotection and spoiling. Some parents restrict exploration, fearing injuries or dirt, even keeping children indoors excessively. Rousseau considered natural pains like fevers as valuable life experiences. How else to appreciate health? The parents should provide ample freedom for sensory exploration. Children naturally learn through bodily interactions with their environment. Let them see, touch, hear, experience temperature, texture, weight, normalize encountering new stimuli. Outdoor physical activities build resilience, as long as within their capabilities. Second principle: prevent early development of master-slave mentalities. Modern parents debate crying responses, comfort immediately versus set boundaries. One camp fears insecurity from unaddressed crying. Others worry crying becomes a manipulative tool. Rousseau warned against letting children learn to manipulate through tears. Differentiate cries, natural needs versus testing dominance. For manipulative crying, ignore completely. Children abandon ineffective strategies through consistent response. If children learn to manipulate through crying early on, their demands might eventually exceed parents' capacity. Sometimes tough love is necessary to preserve their natural freedom in the long run. But this firmness has limits. Never use threats or violence to assert dominance. Rousseau believed this would cultivate slave mentality in children. We've covered Rousseau's natural education philosophy for 0 to 2 years. Avoid overprotection and allow physical exploration. Also prevent manipulative crying and avoid creating submissive mentality through punishment. At this stage, children exist without full self-awareness. Proper education during this period lays foundation for autonomous individuals. Now let's examine educational methods for 2 to 12-year-olds. Rousseau proposed 3 principles. First, align desires with capabilities. After age 2, children gradually replace crying with verbal expression. Self-awareness begins emerging with developing thoughts and intentions. Imagination flourishes alongside capacity for good or bad actions. Modern psychology identifies 3 and 9 as critical self-awareness milestones. Focus shifts to preventing moral corruption and excessive desires rather than teaching abstract concepts. As Chinese wisdom says, nurture purity during early enlightenment, cultivating natural simplicity, balance freedom with boundaries, avoid creating entitled little tyrants through overindulgence. True happiness comes from balancing capabilities and desires, neither suppressing wants nor endlessly chasing abilities. Therefore, a key educational principle during this stage is aligning children's capabilities with their desires. Confucius said, "Those who don't plan ahead will find trouble at their doorstep." But Rousseau argued excessive future planning beyond real needs destroys present happiness. Rousseau warned against misusing imagination. Don't let children over fantasize about future or let adult anxieties hinder present growth. Many parents imagine childhood as cutthroat competition, fearing losing at the starting line. Should we force elementary students into exam prep for college admissions? Rousseau would oppose cramming Olympiad math, piano, fencing, advocating interest-driven learning through tangible experiences. He rejected developing imagination unrelated to immediate needs. The more children live naturally present, the smaller gap between ability and desire, thus freer. True freedom, wanting achievable things, doing enjoyable activities. Having covered desire capability alignment, let's discuss sensory experiential education. Rousseau believed rational thinking develops after 12. Premature lecturing creates precocious but hollow understanding. He illustrated experiential learning through property rights education. Emile's first lesson about ownership came through practical experience, not lectures. The story, Rousseau secretly had Emile plant beans in someone else's garden. When the owner removed the beans, Emile was heartbroken. But through this pain, Emile learned negotiation, securing a plot by sharing harvests. Thus, Emile experienced real-world property rights and exchange processes. Similarly, language, geography, and history learning should be experiential during this stage, aligning with children's natural cognitive development. Adults must prevent contamination by artificial abstract concepts. For similar reasons, Rousseau opposed teaching fables at this stage. First, children don't truly understand the concepts. Second, without life experience, they might misinterpret moral lessons. Rousseau even discouraged excessive reading, prioritizing sensory development over early literacy. Direct experience cultivates genuine curiosity better than theoretical learning. With emerging self-awareness, 2 to 12 years, how to teach social interaction becomes crucial. This naturally leads to moral education challenges. Third principle, foundational moral education, do no harm, precedes teaching virtue. Without this foundation, even good intentions become harmful. As the saying goes, one's meat may be another's poison. Well-meaning actions often unintentionally hurt others. Rousseau asserted, never harming others is itself tremendous goodness. These methods preserve childhood joy while developing reason and bodily freedom. Education should emphasize modeling and experience over lectures during 2 to 12 years. Sensory development takes priority. Moral education centers on non-harm principle. Thus, Emile matured intellectually without sacrificing childhood freedom and happiness. Now we transition to education for 12 to 15-year-olds. How can education during this period further develop children's capacity for freedom and happiness? The crucial standard for learning at this stage, knowledge must be practical and directly relevant to human life. Rousseau bluntly stated, "I hate books." He believed nature itself is the ultimate textbook. Human nature naturally cultivates curiosity before rational maturity. Educators should spark curiosity through practical scenarios rather than direct answers, like learning astronomy through observing sunrises or navigation through forest exploration. Study geography by mapping local routes and rivers, creating maps rather than just reading them. Discover physics through magnetic experiments inspired by magicians' tricks. Learn chemistry by testing wine authenticity. This experiential learning starkly contrasts rote classroom memorization. It directly fuels curiosity by integrating knowledge with lived experience. As life is finite but knowledge infinite, education's goal becomes cultivating inquiry methods and sustained focus. Teach children to pause activities before boredom sets in, preserving intellectual curiosity. Emile Long studied only Robinson Crusoe, learning survival skills like farming and carpentry. For free individuals, Practical skills outweigh ornamental luxuries like gold or diamonds. Thus, Emile respected bakers and masons more than jewelers, needing watchmakers least, as he followed natural rhythms rather than artificial schedules. Rousseau's career advice resonates deeply with modern sensibilities. He stated, "All sedentary occupations corrupt the body. True skills grant freedom from wealth's tyranny." But Rousseau wasn't advocating regression. These skills enable individual independence. After mastering practical skills, Emile learns exchange systems and governmental functions to integrate knowledge holistically. Rousseau clarified, learning crafts isn't just vocational training, it's human formation. Emile should labor like farmers and think like philosophers, developing reason through nature's practical wisdom. Thus concludes Rousseau's 12 to 15 education. Practical skills integration through experiential learning. At 15, Emile possesses physical dexterity, multiple skills, and free-spirited rationality, still fundamentally natural. Now we address adolescent emotional education as biological changes emerge. Puberty brings voice changes, temperament shifts, and natural sexual awakening, requiring careful guidance. Mishandling this phase risks catastrophic consequences. Rousseau warned, lax education now ruins everything. This critical period shapes fraternity, core to French Revolution ideals. How does Emile cultivate compassionate relationships? Rousseau's empathy development begins with self-love, natural human instinct, the challenge, transforming self-love into universal compassion. Rousseau believed human sociability arises from shared needs like cooperation for food, and shared experiences of mortality, illness, poverty, and life's hardships. Like seeing Wenchuan earthquake victims suffering, we can't help but shed tears of compassion. Thus, cultivating Emile's empathy requires simple environments exposing shared struggles, not lavish social settings breeding vanity. Self-love thus expands into compassion for others. Emile learns to love humankind with open-hearted generosity. Self-love forms the foundation for developing empathy, but excessive self-love becomes destructive egoism. How to prevent this harmful transformation? Through rational restraint of desires. Rousseau held limited faith in pure rationality. He saw reason as mere intellectual judgment. How then to effect behavioral change? Rousseau cites a father taking his wayward son to venereal disease clinics. The shocking sight reformed him. But human nature proves more complex in reality. How to teach complexity without harmful exposure? Through historical examples. Hence, history's educational timing. Tables become teachable when moral discernment develops, understanding evil without imitation. Rousseau also opposed rhetoric training, believing plain speech cultivates moral restraint. Like Confucius, Rousseau distrusted silver-tongued flatterers. Through such education, the youth expands compassion from self-love to universal fraternity. Rousseau's adolescent education, transforming self-love into social empathy through experiential learning. We've now explored Rousseau's naturalistic education philosophy and its application across developmental stages. Rousseau believed proper education should be rooted in children's natural development. He advocated for a naturalistic education approach. Parents should be personally involved without overindulging their children. Children need free play and exploration through nature, avoiding early development of master-slave mentality. House 12 education focuses on practical skills and observational analysis over rote memorization. During adolescence, cultivate compassion through self-love while rationally regulating desires. Through social interactions, Emile completes transition from natural to social being. Emile requires further education to love responsibly and become a qualified citizen. Developing profound convictions and resilience for life's trials will be our next episode's focus.